Oh, let me start that over again. It's my first time doing live. Hi there, folks. I'm going to go ahead and reintroduce myself since nobody heard what I just said. Folks, welcome to my live stream. My name is Jim, and I used to be a type 2 diabetic. And I love saying that I used to be a type 2 diabetic because I used to be a type 2 diabetic. I have reversed type 2 diabetes. I'm in remission from it. I don't take medications anymore. That's because my doctor told me I don't have to. So however you want to word it, I just don't have it anymore. And I love doing these live streams and telling people exactly what it is that I do to achieve that. Now, in fact, about 3 years ago, maybe a few weeks ago was the start date. I started doing live streams on TikTok of all places and really talking about the Feel Great system. And over the last few years, I've kind of found some ways to talk about it that kind of break through and help people understand what exactly this thing is. Now, there's a lot of doctors on social media who are talking about this. In fact, if you'd like their call schedule, just get with me or get with the person who invited you to this, and they will gladly share those calls. I want to be clear, I am not a doctor. What I am is a dork who really likes to dig into the science and talk about the science. And if I was going to talk about these products, I wanted to make sure that I really, really understood what it was that we were asking people to take. And I was going to get onto it myself. And again, I have reversed type 2 diabetes. Now, to that point, I have helped no fewer than 100 people reverse type 2 diabetes. Lots of people losing weight, blood pressure issues, heart issues. It's been absolutely the most incredible journey of my entire life. So without further ado, let me first off say welcome to the live stream, everybody. And if you are new to me, type new in the comment section. I'm curious how many people are new to me. And then the other thing is, if you've been here before, this is a prime opportunity for you to invite somebody to this and share this live stream with somebody and let them hear what I'm saying here. And maybe we're able to impact another life if you've been here before. And then, you know what, I'll save that part for later. Now, true to form, for those who know me, I don't really do a script very well. I kind of have in my mind what I'm going to talk about tonight, but I don't do a script very well. So I'm kind of improvising. I'm kind of making this up as I go along. Don't really know what I'm going to say. So we'll see. Hopefully this works out well. I will tell you that next week I plan to bring in a guest to give me their testimonial, just so that you know. And I will get back to doing these every single Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So come and join me next week. Anyway, let's talk about the Feel Great system. And, you know, I mentioned earlier that I reversed type 2 diabetes. Well, what did I do to reverse type 2 diabetes? Well, let me start with this thing right here. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. Oops, wrong button. Okay. So this is from the Centers for Disease Control. Well, that's really weird. I can't see myself anymore, but I guess it doesn't really matter. You don't have to see me, right? We don't need to see me. There I am. This is from the Centers for Disease Control. Now, this is a write-up on what is insulin resistance. So let's really focus on insulin resistance. And I was going to read out loud, but my wife told me that I was incredibly boring if I did that. So I'm not going to read it, but I'll encourage you to go and look this up. You can just type into Google about insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, and it'll bring you to the Centers for Disease Control, this right here. Anyway, so what is insulin resistance? Well, in a nutshell, when you consume a carbohydrate, and that's something like a cookie or a slice of bread, your body converts that carbohydrate into sugar. Now, there are lots of different types of sugar. There is fructose. That's the kind of sugar that you'll find in an apple. There is sucrose. That's the kind of sugar that you'll find on your table, you know, processed white sugar. There is, let me think, lactose. There is all sorts of oses. If it ends in O-S-E, well, guess what? It's a sugar. In fact, there's allulose. If you've never heard of allulose, there's your cheat code for the day. Allulose is a real sugar. It's not quite as sweet as sugar. It's like 1.5 to 1. But what it does do, it does not affect your glucose, which we're going to talk a lot about tonight, but it does increase your GLP-1. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Glucagon-like peptide 1. A lot of people have heard about that. So your cheat code for the day is allulose. That's a great one. Now, let's get back to glucose. When you consume that carbohydrate, now that's that slice of bread, that cookie, whatever it may be, your body converts that carbohydrate into glucose. And glucose is special. That's the type of sugar that your cells use for energy. Now, that glucose goes out to your bloodstream. The problem is the cell is locked. It doesn't just get the glucose. It has to be unlocked. Okay, and that is one of the roles of this funny little hormone called insulin. And I say hormone, a lot of people don't realize that insulin is a hormone. In fact, it's the most active hormone in your body. It reaches out, it literally touches every single cell on your body. So when you consume food that converts to glucose, the glucose goes out to the bloodstream. That's what your cells want to use for energy. But the cell is locked. It can't just get it. Well, anytime there's glucose present, it signals the pancreas to secrete the hormone insulin. Insulin goes out to the bloodstream. It reacts with the cell, kind of unlocks it. It kind of acts like a gatekeeper or a key. It unlocks it so that the glucose can go in. Now, when that happens, the glucose levels will normalize. They'll begin to lower. And after that, the insulin level, the hormone level, begins to lower as well. That's a perfect world. But, we don't live in a perfect world, so let's build on the imperfect world. What happens when you consume the carbohydrate and your body converts it to glucose, like it always does? The glucose goes out to the bloodstream. It signals the pancreas to secrete insulin, but then nothing happens. Nothing happens at all. Well, that's what a type 1 diabetic's problem is. Their pancreas doesn't secrete the insulin. They never get the key. And so what does a type 1 diabetic do? They inject themselves with a synthetic insulin. They're kind of guessing at how much insulin their body needs based on the number of carbohydrates. You'll notice type 1 diabetics are always very strict with counting their carbohydrates. That's how they control their glucose. So they guess how much they need, and they're pretty good at it. They've been doing it literally their entire lives. They know how to do it. Now, that's the type 1 diabetic. The type 2 diabetic is on the other end of the spectrum. And I'm going to go ahead and shut this thing off. We don't need to have this here. So the type 2 diabetic is a completely different problem. So the type 2, they consume the food. The body converts it to glucose just like everybody else on the planet. That tells the pancreas to secrete the hormone insulin, and it does. It secretes insulin. The insulin goes out to the bloodstream, but it doesn't react with the cell. The cell is resistant to the insulin. It doesn't react. The cell doesn't get unlocked with the insulin. And so what happens next? Well, a lot like that type 1 diabetic, the glucose levels begin to climb. They don't decline like they're supposed to. They start to incline. They increase. Now, what tells the pancreas to secrete insulin? That exact situation right there, rising glucose. So as the glucose levels begin to rise, it's simultaneously signaling the pancreas to secrete more insulin. So as the person becomes more and more and more hyperglycemic, that's the term for elevated glucose, elevated blood sugar, they are also becoming hyperinsulinemic, elevated insulin, hyperinsulinemia. Now that's the word of the day for you. Memorize that. There'll be a test on it later on today. Hyperinsulinemia. Now, hyperinsulinemia, elevated insulin. It's funny, that's what's actually causing the cell to stop responding. We are literally overwhelming our cells in insulin, and they stop responding as a result. So if you want to resensitize the cell to the insulin, well, you start by lowering the insulin, right? Start lowering that down. Okay, let me catch up on any questions that we have here. Okay, I don't see it. Well, everybody, welcome. Okay. So we've talked about what is insulin resistance, and what causes it, hyperinsulinemia. Now, there are a lot of other things that cause insulin resistance as well, namely, just to name a few, would be lack of sleep. And I would ask, how many of you get a poor night's rest? If you get a poor night's rest, just type me in the comment section. I'm curious. How many of you get a poor night's rest? Another thing to do to get it would be high stress. How many of you have stress in your life? That also causes insulin resistance. They all go kind of hand in hand. So, but tonight, we're going to talk about hyperinsulinemia. Believe it or not, it's actually really, really easy to fix. Okay? Okay, so we've talked about what is insulin resistance, what causes insulin resistance, and then what does insulin resistance cause? Now, I want to go to this gentleman right here, and let me turn my camera on. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about, I'll go to Google and just type into Google Dr. Ben Bikman. And you'll see their little AI thing on Dr. Bikman. It's pretty interesting. Dr. Ben Bikman, PhD, is a renowned metabolic scientist, researcher, and professor currently serving as a professor of cell biology and physiology at Brigham Young University. In fact, if you go to BYU, you can see Dr. Ben Bikman's profile right there. He is a professor of cell biology and physiology. Now, if I scroll down a little bit, you'll see his research interests. The focus of my lab, which is the Laboratory of Obesity and Metabolism, is twofold. First, we aim to identify molecular mechanisms that explain the increased risk of disease that accompanies weight gain, with particular emphasis on the etiology of insulin resistance. Okay, so this right here, I'm going to build on this. Why would this guy who grows fat cells focus on insulin resistance? Well, he actually did a video a little while ago that I want to share with you. And by the way, if you would like to see this video, it is on my YouTube. You can go to my YouTube channel and watch it. But this is Dr. Ben Bikman talking about insulin.
And this will blow some minds. You cannot have a fat cell grow unless insulin is elevated. It is totally, completely, utterly impossible. Now, I know people want to say, oh, well, calories matter too. They do matter. But if you just take out that one single variable, if you deprive a fat cell of insulin, it cannot grow. 100% full stop. Take this from a guy who literally grows fat cells in my lab all the time. In a human model, you even see this. If you have a person with type 1 diabetes, they can eat 10,000 calories in a day. And all they do is skip an insulin injection and they will be as skinny as they want. In fact, this is so well known to that diabetic that it's a known eating disorder. It's more of a hormone disorder. But if they just skip their insulin injection, they'll be as skinny as they want. It's a condition called diabulimia. You only eliminate one single variable, the insulin. They cannot not only grow fat, they can't even hold on to it. So as much as calories matter, and they do, insulin is an absolutely necessary signal to tell the fat cell to grow.
Pretty interesting, huh? And I would ask the question real quick. Everybody that's watching right now, how many people just maybe learned something about insulin and fat cells? Like, obviously, calories matter, but without insulin, they don't. That's the key. Okay, so now, Dr. Bikman, in case you're curious, he has a website, and I highly recommend. I'm not a paid spokesman for this guy. I just am absolutely smitten by him. He has this website. It's called insuliniq.com. I would go and join that. It's a free trial to join. There's also, he has a YouTube channel, Dr. Ben Bikman, and he does these metabolic classrooms that are just fascinating. They're 20 to 30 minutes, and he does a really good job of describing the problem to us. Now, real quick, let me just show this. One more final plug for Dr. Bikman. He has a book called Why We Get Sick. Again, if you're trying to figure out why you're here, how you got here, how did you get type 2 diabetes, how did you get the weight, how did you get the high blood pressure, this book right here, Why We Get Sick, will absolutely change your life. So Why We Get Sick by Dr. Ben Bikman. Now, on that Insulin IQ website, let me come back to this real briefly. Dr. Bikman used to, and it's not up there anymore, it's disappointing, but he used to have this image. And this is from Insulin IQ. This is Dr. Bikman's website. And so how many of you struggle with any of these? If you struggle with one or more of these, in fact, just type the number 1, 2, 3 of these conditions, 4 of these conditions. How many of these conditions do you struggle with? How many does your spouse struggle with? How many do your children or your parents or your sister or your brother or your next door neighbor, your coworker? How many of you either struggle with these or know somebody that struggles with these conditions? Now, these are things that Dr. Bikman says are all caused by the same thing, insulin resistance. And so what do? We treat type 2 diabetes with metformin. We learned how to manage our type 2 diabetes with metformin, right? We learned how to manage our high blood pressure with with, and of course the name escapes me right now, but the blood pressure medications. We learned to manage erectile dysfunction with the little blue pill, or PCOS with metformin. Think about all of these things. In fact, Dr. Bickman might go so far as to say that, well, if it isn't something that's caused by like a cold or a flu transmissible, it probably has something to do with insulin resistance. And that really just kind of opens up Pandora's box. Now, if you find yourself in this position of, oh my God, well, now what do? I'm just sick. I'm just getting sicker and sicker and sicker. I want to point out that Dr. Bickman went on record and said, it was on one of his videos, and I encourage, you'll find it if you start watching him. He said, no matter how far gone you think you are, you can always reverse insulin resistance. You can always, always, always do it. So if you feel like you are helpless or you are hopeless, like so many people do, just know that there is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. You can fix this thing. It just takes some effort. And you really have to kind of understand what caused it in the first place. So we've talked about what is insulin resistance, what causes insulin resistance, and then what does insulin resistance cause? Well, it kind of causes everything. It's ridiculous on there, right? Okay, so I see Tanya says I had at least 4 on there. Hey, Kim, how are you? Okay, so let's dig a little bit deeper. Let's start talking about some medications. How many of you are on metformin? Metformin is the #1 prescribed medication for type 2 diabetes. If you are on metformin, I'm curious just how many of you are on metformin. I want to kind of go down a rabbit hole here. And if you're on metformin, let me just add a follow-up question to that. If you are on metformin and you have neuropathy, peripheral neuropathy, some sort of pain, tingling, or numbness in your feet, legs, or extremities, just say me. I'm curious how many of you have that? Because what if there was a connection? What if there was a connection between metformin and that diabetic neuropathy? Now, what do you do for neuropathy? You end up taking something like glipizide, right? Or something like that to help with that discomfort. Well, I want to point out this study right here. I guess I got to turn my camera on. I want to point out this study right here. Long-term metformin use and vitamin B12 deficiency in the Diabetes Prevention Program's outcome study. This is an interesting study. They were looking to see if people on metformin got vitamin B12 deficiency, and the conclusions: long-term use of metformin was associated with biochemical deficiency and anemia. So now I guess I asked the question, if you're on metformin and you are vitamin B12 deficient, did you know that there's this correlation here? Now, to dig a little bit deeper, I guess to add a little bit to that. By the way, these studies that I'm showing are from National Institutes for Health, NIH. This is an official website of the United States government. It's a .gov address. I'm not showing you funny studies or anything like this. This can all be found on PubMed's website. So this study right here, metformin-induced vitamin B12 deficiency among type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. This is a systematic review. So this kind of looks at a lot of different research and comes up with the answer from all of that different research. And again, let's see, where's it at? There is a correlation between metformin intake and vitamin B12 deficiency. Now, I kind of seem like I'm beating a drum for no real reason right here, but let's go ahead and look at this study. Associations between long-term metformin use, the risk of vitamin B12 deficiency, and neuropathy. There's where it all kind of starts to come together. So this study right here, they concluded long-term metformin use is associated with both an increased risk of vitamin B12 deficiency and peripheral neuropathy in patients with type 2 diabetes. Now, that's kind of crazy, right? Let me see here. Now, I want to talk about something that seems to be really a hot topic right now, GLP-1. How many of you are either on or are considering going on GLP-1? glucagon-like peptide 1? And if you are, would you do me a favor and just put in the comment section which one you're either on or you are considering going on? And you'll hear a lot of people saying things like Ozempic or Manjaro or Trulicity. I was on Trulicity for quite a while, Saxenda, and then there's the weight loss version of those. There's Wegovy. There's, wow, I mean, you get the semaglutide, tirzepatide. There's so many of these things out there now, right? So let's talk about that little hormone called GLP-1. So what those drugs are doing, those are synthetic versions of your hormone. Your body actually makes a hormone. It's an incretin hormone called glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1. It's made in your gut. That's kind of crazy to think about. Your body actually it makes GLP-1, and it's stimulated by the kinds of foods that we eat. And I think we can all agree that we don't have the best of diets, right? So with that in mind, let's talk about GLP-1 receptor agonists. There are a lot of people that are on these. GLP-1 receptor agonists, that is Ozempic, Manjaro, Wegovy, Zepbound, Trulicity, Saxenda, Ribelsis, semaglutide, tirzepatide. These are all glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonists. And I want to talk about some side effects that may be associated with those medications. And maybe you've heard of them and maybe you haven't. And if you have, good. If you have not, then hopefully you learned something here. So this study, I guess I got to share the camera real quick. This study right here, GLP-1 receptor agonists, I want to just add, when you're taking one of those medications, they are GLP-1 receptor agonists and the risk of thyroid cancer. Now, this study looked at, it was like 45,000, and they found use of GLP-1 receptor agonist for 1 to 3 years was associated with an increased risk of all thyroid cancer. This is an adjusted hazard ratio of 1.58. That means there was a 58% increased risk of all thyroid cancer and a 78% increased risk of medullary thyroid cancer. So if you're taking one of those and you've heard, hey, there may be this side effect of, thyroid cancer, and it doesn't really happen to a whole lot of people, that's a 58% increased risk of all thyroid cancer and 78% of medullary thyroid. Those are pretty high numbers, pretty high numbers. And if you know that side effect and you still decide that you want to take that medication, good for you. I think it's important that people actually know those numbers. In fact, those numbers, let's go here. Let's just go to Ozempic, to their website, and you will see on Ozempic's website, when you go to the actual website, a warning will pop up at the bottom right there. Possible thyroid tumors, including cancer. It's on their website. I'm not going to waste your time with Manjaro and Trulicity, but it's on all of those as well. Now, let's go a little bit further, and I want to talk about something called gastrointestinal adverse events, more specifically gastroparesis. This study right here looked at glucagon-like peptide 1 agonists associated gastrointestinal adverse events. So this study right here found that 5.1% of the people taking those medications got gastroparesis. Now that's 1 in 20. Paresis is a paralyzing of the stomach muscle. So 1 in 20 people got gastroparesis. These are terrifying numbers. Now, why do I bring that up? We're going to talk a lot about an alternative to these medications for increasing your GLP-1. We're going to talk about increasing your GLP-1 naturally, okay? No side effects. Very, very, very well proven. Okay, so one final piece of this puzzle. I'm curious what you eat taking the Feel Great system. Jesse, I love talking about what I eat, and I'm going to take some questions here afterwards. Let's talk about one other medication out there. How many of you are on a statin medication, something like rosuvastatin or atorvastatin or simvastatin, pravastatin, fluvastatin, Lipitor, Crestor, Zocor, something like that? If you're on one of those, would you just say, I am? I'm kind of curious how many of you are. Now, here's an interesting little piece, and you could go to Google and ask this question. In fact, I'll do it right now. Hopefully, I don't get stung. I don't normally get stung, but let's go like this. I'm going to go ahead and share this tab. I want to go over here to Google and just ask, is insulin resistance a greater predictor for heart disease than LDL cholesterol? And Google will tell you emerging evidence suggests that insulin resistance is a stronger, more accurate predictor of cardiovascular disease than LDL cholesterol. Now, the reason I bring that up is you would take atorvastatin calcium or rosuvastatin or simvastatin, pravastatin, fluvastatin, something like that. You would take those medications to control your LDL cholesterol. So here we go. Let's kind of go down this rabbit hole. The global pharmaceutical revenue in 2023 was estimated to be $1.607 trillion. $1.607 trillion. I got that number from statista.com. Good little website. I've also seen 1.7 trillion in 2024, and you know that 2025 was up. It doesn't ever seem to go the other way. That never seemed to lower in sales. They are going up. And to put into perspective, I think at times we hear the word trillion all the time, and we don't really, we become numb to what a trillion is. Well, if you started earning $1 every second of the day, and imagine that, if in 1 minute you earned $60, in 1 hour you earned $3,600, you'd probably be a pretty happy person. One day you would earn $86,400. If you did that every day for like 11 days, you'd be a millionaire. It would take you 30 years to be a billionaire. That's how big a billion is. It would take you over 50,000 years to get to $1.607 trillion. It is a massive number. That's what they generated in 2023. Now, how do we get to that number? Let's bring this back. I'm going to bring it back to rosuvastatin, atorvastatin, the statin medications, okay? So, let's see. This study right here, actually, how am I going to do this? I'm going to start here. And by the way, I told you I kind of make it up as I'm going along. I don't have a script. I didn't have a rehearsal. I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here. So bear with me. But this is HuffPost, and I won't really go to HuffPost very frequently. I like this particular article because it was written in December of 2013. Something significant to 2013. And this article was also written by Dr. Barbara Roberts. Okay, Dr. Barbara Roberts right there. Now, in 2013, the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology released new vascular disease prevention guidelines. They are an egregious example of much that is wrong with medicine today. Now, Dr. Barbara Roberts would go on to just absolutely lambaste the American Heart Association. She said, the American Heart Association, Dr. Barbara Roberts, medical doctor, by the way, and the American College of Cardiology recently released new cardiovascular disease prevention guidelines. They are an egregious example of much that is wrong with medicine today. The guidelines proposed a vast expansion of the use of statins in healthy people. I hope you heard that loud and clear. In healthy people now being prescribed statin medications, recommending them for about 44% of men and 22% of healthy women between the ages of 40 and 75. According to calculations by John Abramson, who is a lecturer at Harvard Medical School, 13.6 million healthy people for whom statins were not recommended based on the 2001 guidelines now fall into a category of being advised to take moderate or high intensity. So we are now prescribing medications to healthy people in the name of prevention, right? Your dad had a heart attack. Well, you're more susceptible, so you should take this too. Now, she would go on. The problem really, and her problem was the money that was involved. The American Heart Association is a nonprofit organization with a mission to build healthier lives free of cardiovascular disease and stroke. Yet in its 2011 and 12 financial statement, the Heart Association noted $521 million, more than $500 million in donations from non-government and non-membership sources, and many well-known large drug companies, including those who make and market statins. Now, so there is a connection. At least Dr. Barbara Roberts is making that connection. This is a study, again, back to provable studies, NIH, again, an official website of the United States government. This study right here looked at what statin medication usage did after those guidelines were implemented. This study between 2013 and 2019, the number of individuals, wrong line. After 2013, the number of individuals who used statins increased by 149%, from 37 million in 2012 and 13 to 92 million in 2018 and 19. That is a huge, huge number. So if there was some back scratching going on, well, there's where you can point it to. Now, why do I beat this drum? Let's go here to this study right here. Again, PubMed, an official website of the United States government, statins and the risk of type 2 diabetes. Did you know that there was a connection between statin medication use and type 2 diabetes? In fact, it's a big deal. There's a big connection, and this study really talks about it. Let me get down a little bit further here. We're going to get to the conclusions. Concluding remarks. Yeah, right here. In a meta-analysis of 15 observational studies, the risk of incident type 2 diabetes was 55%. That is a massive number. In 4 individual studies, the risk of incident type 2 diabetes was from 36 to 48%, and in the U.S. veteran study, 21 to 22% for low and medium potency statins like pravastatin or fluvastatin, and 34% for high potency statins like simvastatin, atorvastatin, and rosuvastatin. So there is a clear connection between insulin resistance and, type 2 diabetes and statin medications. Well, if type 2 diabetes is again caused by insulin resistance, we know that that's what's causing it. Well, then there must be a connection between statin medications and insulin, right? So that brings us to this study right here. PubMed Central, assessing, by the way, this was published in July of 2023, assessing the link between statins and insulin intolerance. This is a systematic review. If you're unfamiliar with a systematic review, really what a systematic review does is it looks at all of the research and takes those answers from all the research and puts them together and finds out what all of them say collectively, yes or no, right? Well, this study is one of those. And they looked at nearly 47 million participants. And guess what? This review provides evidence that the use of statins may have an adverse effect on insulin sensitivity and increase insulin resistance. So wait a minute. Those statin medications that we're now giving healthy people, mind you, giving healthy people are causing insulin resistance. Now I ask, how many of you started with one medication and it grew to 2 medications and it grew to 3 medications? And how do we get to $1.607 trillion? Now, let's talk about this. What's up, Justin? How are you, buddy? Okay, let's get in a little bit deeper here, okay? We've talked about what is insulin resistance, what causes insulin resistance, something we certainly do not want. We don't want insulin resistance, right? Because if that's the root of all evil, well, okay. So we talked earlier about consuming the carbohydrate. Your body converts it to glucose. That glucose goes out to the bloodstream. That signals the pancreas to secrete the hormone insulin. The insulin goes out and reacts with the cell. It kind of unlocks the cell for the glucose to go in. Now, how does this really work on a day-to-day process? How do we get stuck in that hyperinsulinemic state? Remember, the hyperinsulinemia is what's causing the cell to stop responding. How do we do that? We do that by spiking our glucose. Sugar. So you eat sugar and your glucose spikes. Well, when your glucose spikes, guess what? Your insulin must spike as well. Now, unlike sugar, you can get a pretty rapid decline in your glucose levels, but insulin's a hormone, so it might take 6 or 8 or more hours to decline. Do we ever give our bodies 6 to 8 hours between meals? No, we snack all day long. We're always kind of grazing. We are always kind of putting something into our mouth, whether it's a soda, whether it's a granola bar, whether it's a bagel or a slice of bread or something. We're always kind of feeding ourselves. Potato chips, processed foods, we're just kind of always eating. That means that our body is always converting those foods to glucose, to that spike, and the insulin spikes. And so as the insulin starts to come down, what do? We spike our glucose again. So the insulin tries to come down and then it goes back up. And then it tries to come down and we spike it again all day long. Now, if you want to resensitize your cell to the insulin, the best thing you can do is stop doing that with your glucose. What's the easiest way to do that? Intermittent fasting, a 16 and 8 time-based eating schedule. Now, I'm not going to lie, when I first learned about intermittent fasting, I was terrified. I thought, I don't like that word. A good friend of mine, Lucy, she refers to it as the F word. Fasting is the F word. And I get it. I felt the same exact way. I was like, I can't not have breakfast. Did you know that breakfast is the most commonly skipped meal in the world already? And so what we're suggesting is skip breakfast. Now, when you skip breakfast, what happens? There's no food coming in to cause that glucose spike. Your glucose levels will begin to normalize. And as your glucose levels normalize, guess what? Your insulin levels will begin to normalize. Get it? And as they normalize, as they kind of start to come down low, they will begin to resensitize the cell to the insulin. Now, Dr. Bickman was talking a little bit ago in that video where, if you give the fat cell insulin, it grows. And if you remove the insulin, it shrinks. So in the presence of insulin, the fat cell must grow. In the absence of insulin, the fat cell must shrink. So how many of you would like to just shrink the fat cell? I think everybody would like to do that, right? So when you lower the insulin, guess what happens? The fat cell begins to shrink. What your body is using that fat for energy. And at times we think, no, that's starvation. You're only losing weight because you're starving yourself. No, that is not true. You're using an alternative fuel source that your body has built in. It's there. It's for you. That's exactly what it's there for. Think about the way that a bear, what does a bear do? It fasts for all of spring, right? That's what it does. It gets fat during the winter and then it fasts while it's hibernating. That's exactly what it's doing. Steve, keep listening. Okay, so, all right. So fasting, intermittent fasting. I like to bring up a quick quiz question real quick for everybody that's listening right now. Has anybody, just give me a yes or no, has anybody ever heard of Angus barberry? Just say yes or no if you've heard of Angus barberry. I like throwing this little trivia question out there, and people who have listened to me do live streams, they definitely know who he is. But if you haven't listened to me, then this will be a crazy one for you. And I'm going to follow that question up with, what do you think is the world record for the longest medically supervised fast? Medically supervised. Now, the reason I bring this up is Angus barberry was a Scottishman. And in the 1960s, he weighed 456 pounds. Angus had a lot of fat. He was very, very big. And Angus thought, you know what? I think I'm going to start fasting. I think I'm just going to stop eating for a little while and see if I can make this thing shrink a little bit. And he went to his doctor, and his doctor's like, I don't think that's a good idea. And Angus said, well, I'm going to do it. Would you check my vitals along the way? I'd like you to watch me and make sure that I don't hurt myself while I do this. Doctor agreed. In fact, the doctor said that Angus had to take some yeast extract. He had to take some vitamins and minerals, and then obviously water. This was not a dry fast, but Angus started what was a medically supervised fast. And he would go on to set a world record for the longest medically supervised fast. In fact, you can see Angus, he has a Wikipedia page. He started fasting June 14th of 1965 and then broke his fast in June of 1966. Angus barberry fasted for 382 pounds. For 382 days, he went from 456 pounds down to his target weight of 80 pounds. And he went on to live for an additional 30 years, never put the weight back on. It's really a fascinating story. But really, what did Angus Barbieri do was he used his fat for energy. So if you're trying to shrink your fat cell, well, we got to start removing the insulin from the equation. If you are hyperinsulinemic, it is literally impossible to shrink the fat cell so long as you got that insulin there. So how do we do that? Try intermittent fasting. So that is the first phase of what we do. We do intermittent fasting. Now, I want to jump into the products because I'll tell you what, personally, I believe these products have saved my life, wholeheartedly saved my life. And I want to start with a tea. And in fact, I am sipping the tea right now, the chocolate flavor. If you haven't tried the chocolate flavor, you're missing out on something really good in life. Okay, let's talk about this tea. There is a tea. It's called yerba mate. Maybe some of you have heard of yerba mate. Yerba mate is a tea that's been pretty heavily consumed in South America for the last 500 to 1,000 years. Now, the indigenous people of the regions of South America that are now Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, they would say that yerba mate was the drink of the gods. It gave them energy. It was an appetite suppressant. Now, there's something inside of yerba mate that we know now through chemistry, through doctors, through phytonutrient chemists, these types of people who actually know what's inside of foods that make foods do what foods do. Well, there's something inside of it called chlorogenic acid. Now, if you've never heard of chlorogenic acid, well, don't feel alone. Not a whole lot of people have. But chlorogenic acid is one of the most abundant polyphenols on Earth. You can find it in most vegetation. In fact, if something turns green, you can start to notice chlorogenic acid probably has something to do with that. So it's kind of everywhere. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, teas, coffees. In fact, it's most abundant in nature in a green coffee bean. Now, because of that, a lot of research that revolves around chlorogenic acid involves coffee consumption. Now I want to kind of dig into chlorogenic acid a little bit. Let's talk about this thing really quick. Let's see, where am I going? Remember, our topic is insulin resistance, right? I got to share my tab. I'm sorry, real quick. The topic is insulin resistance and reversing insulin resistance. Well, if you go to Google and just ask Google, does chlorogenic acid reverse insulin resistance? Google will tell you, yeah, it's a polyphenol found in coffee and various plants. It shows significant potential to reverse or improve insulin resistance. Well, let's just dig a little bit further. What foods have chlorogenic acid? Chlorogenic acid is a potent antioxidant polyphenol found abundantly in plant-based foods, with green coffee beans being among the richest source. It's also available in fruits, vegetables. It's kind of everywhere. It really is literally everywhere. Now, how many of you have high blood pressure? If you have high blood pressure, just type "I do" in the comment section. I'm really kind of curious how many of you have high blood pressure. Now, this study right here, again, PubMed, an official website of the United States, looked at the effects of chlorogenic on blood pressure. This is a systematic, another one of those systematic reviews. I love those systematic reviews. It's kind of hard to argue with them. And meta-analysis of randomized clinical trials. They looked at chlorogenic acid and blood pressure. And they concluded, in conclusion, the evidence from published randomized clinical trials suggests that chlorogenic acid intake causes statistically significant reductions in systolic and diastolic blood pressures. Chlorogenic acid lowers blood pressure. And now I just want to kind of throw this out there as a teaser. Is it that unbelievable that something that can be found in vegetables could lower your blood pressure? I mean, come on. It's pretty believable, right? Just give me a yes or no. Okay. Now, this study right here, chlorogenic acid improves glucose tolerance. That's what we've been talking about, glucose tolerance, right? Lipids metabolism, your cholesterol. How many of you are concerned about cholesterol? Inflammation. How many of you have inflammation? If you have inflammation issues, just type "I do" in the comment section. And microbiota composition in diabetic mice. Now, this is a really interesting one because coming back to metformin, let's just talk about metformin again. This study right here, in the current study, diabetic mice were administered chlorogenic acid or metformin. They were administered one or the other. This is literally a side-by-side comparison of something that's found in fruits and vegetables versus metformin. And the results are really, really interesting. The results showed that chlorogenic acid decreased body weight and improved glucose tolerance and insulin resistance. So it helped lower weight, it improved glucose tolerance as well as insulin resistance. And these effects were similar to those of metformin. Think about the magnitude of that statement. These effects were similar to those of metformin. Now, this study right here, this is just kind of backing that one up right there, okay? Chlorogenic acid is a novel insulin sensitizer that potentiates insulin action similar to the therapeutic action of metformin. Wow, it's just such a powerful statement. Now, we talked earlier about GLP-1, and I said that GLP-1 could be induced by foods. That's what induces your body into producing GLP-1. So this study right here, a chlorogenic acid-induced increase in GLP-1 production. Now look at that. Indeed, there is recent evidence that coffee increases production of the incretin hormone glucagon-like peptide 1. How many of you are just kind of reasonably entertained or fascinated with this? Like, hey, wait a minute. They not only didn't tell me that I had a 58% increased risk of thyroid cancer, but they also didn't tell me that I could get it from a vegetable. Now, this guy right here is Dr. Andrew Huberman. Dr. Andrew Huberman is a professor of neurobiology and, by courtesy of, psychiatry and behavioral sciences. He's a professor, he's a brain scientist at Stanford Medicine. In fact, he has a podcast. It's called Huberman Labs. And I really, really encourage everybody, if you're trying to get healthy, go listen to him. In fact, it's the #1 ranked health-related podcast in the world. This guy is kind of all that. And I always like to go through his education. I don't know why. I'm just kind of a little bit fascinated by it. He got his bachelor's from the University of California, Santa Barbara, his master's from Cal Berkeley, his PhD from Cal Davis, and his postdoctorate work came from Stanford University. This guy is smart. Now, he was on Jimmy Fallon's show a while back. If you wanted to go and watch that episode, Jimmy Fallon doesn't miss a single one of his episodes. He was also on Joe Rogan's podcast a while back, and I'm going to play this one for you because he talks, remember we were talking about yerba mate. He talks specifically about yerba mate.
You were talking about people won't do the thing. Right now there's a lot of excitement about semaglutide.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a GLP-1 glucagon-like peptide. The story of that is, since you like animals and the natural world, a guy down in South America was looking at Gila monsters, those really scary things, and he realized they don't have to eat very often. I wonder if they're hungry all the time or not. Turns out it takes their blood, isolates a peptide, which turns out to be GLP-1, puts it into other animals, and realizes it suppresses appetite. Amazing, right? Like this is what I love about biology. Some dude who studies Gila monsters. Turns out humans make GLP-1. GLP-1 is stimulated by things like yerba mate tea, certain other compounds, plant compounds stimulate its release. But what does it do in the hypothalamus? It suppresses hunger by way of, there's a particular brain arcuate pathway, blah, blah, blah. But it also affects the mechanosensors of the gut so that you feel like your gut's full. Like it's almost like you're getting like a pharmacologic tummy, stapled stomach, right? So when people take a drug that mimics GLP-1, their brain is like, well, I'm not as hungry, and their stomach feels full even though it's empty.
How interesting is that, right? How many people found that to be interesting? Now, let's talk about Unimate. Unimate is one of the 2 drinks that we drink every single day. Unimate is a yerba mate extract. Now, what is a yerba mate extract? What happens is Unicity, they own the farm fields in South America, and they still hire very specialized farm hands who know when the opportune time to hand harvest the yerba leaf is. They will go through, they hand harvest, a very trained eye to do this. And it's important to point out that they own the farmlands in that region of South America. They didn't try and do some sort of GMO experiment here in the United States. They're actually growing the product in that region of the world. Now, what they do, they still hand harvest it. They still fire roast it in a way that it's been done for basically forever. But then they stop the traditional process and they extract the good things out of it that we want, like chlorogenic acid and like theobromine and the mate saponins and the antioxidants. They extract all these wonderful things out of it, and then they concentrate it, highly concentrated, and then they purify it. And they get rid of the things that we don't want, like heavy metals and pesticides and that sort of thing. In fact, they look for 26 different ingredients to remove from it. And what we end up with is quite literally just a perfect version of yerba mate. Now, if you've never had yerba mate, you would know that it's a little bit bitter. I shouldn't say a little bit. It's a lot of it bitter. It's really quite bitter. And that bitter is actually really good for you. But here in the United States, we don't go for bitter. We tend to go for sweet. And we like flavorings. And so what they've done is they've naturally flavored it with lemon rind. Now, natural flavoring, people get concerned about that. It's naturally flavored with lemon rind. And then they sweetened it with stevia, plant-based. This is a plant-based drink. Now, this tea right here is really quite fascinating. And I want to dig my heels into that a little bit. Let's talk about this study right here. This study was done by Dr. Ben Bickman. You'll see his name at the bottom right there, right? Dr. Ben Bickman. Yerba mate supplement exerts beneficial tissue-specific effects on mitochondrial efficiency and redox status in healthy adult mice. Now, I keep mentioning mice. I want to just touch on that really quick. A lot of these studies, to get to the tissue that they needed to study, they had to sacrifice the mouse, and they just haven't found a whole lot of people that are willing to do that yet. So, yes, they did some studies on mice. However, they were able to make the connection to humans. It still stands. It's beneficial. But what you'll notice is Dr. Bickman, the mate that he used from Unicity International. Dr. Ben Bickman has now published research on Unicity Unimate. Now, the way that he describes this, and I'm going to let him really describe it best for you. In fact, Dr. Bickman has done a video where he's fascinated by this. Remember, this guy grows fat cells for a living. Dr. Bickman has done videos on this, and the way that he describes it is, imagine parking your car in your driveway. You go out to your driveway, you start your car up, and you sit there, and you just rev the motor. You're just doing that over and over and over again. You never do that because that's very wasteful, right? You'd just be burning resources. You would never do that. Well, Dr. Bickman says that's what Unimate does to your fat. It makes you a more efficient fat burner. That study right there is proof of that. Now, interestingly enough, while he was studying that, he made some interesting observations on GLP-1. And while they weren't published, he did talk about them. And I think it's worth playing this video for you. This is Dr. Ben Bickman talking about GLP-1 and Unimate. Are you ready? This right here. Oh, I guess I got to go over here. All right.
Meeting in March in Las Vegas is that this yerba mate supplement called Unimate also increases GLP-1. We found in this experiment we did, the GLP-1 levels went up by about 70% in a fasted states, which is pretty considerable. That I'll be sharing at a meeting in March in Las Vegas is that this yerba mate supplement called Unimate also increases GLP-1. We found in this experiment we did, the GLP-1 levels went up by about 70% in a fasted states, which is pretty considerable.
Okay. So I just realized it's getting pretty late. I'm going to kind of push the accelerator pedal, but that is pretty interesting. I guess let me ask the question real quick. How many of you found that to be interesting? Just say yes or no. If you found that to be interesting, just type yes or no. Now, I'm going to go into here. Let's see. I forgot to mention Unimate has about 20 times the chlorogenic acid of a typical cup of yerba mate. It's quite potent. Okay, so we're going to come over here and we're going to look at this study right here, Closing America's Fiber Intake Gap. This is a study, again, I found it on PubMed Central, Closing America's Fiber Intake. In this study, they found that let's see, it was 95 of Americans do not get their recommended daily intake of fiber. Only 5% of us do. And to build on that, fiber is associated with digestive health and reduced risk for heart disease, stroke, hypertension, certain gastrointestinal disorders, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and certain cancers. It's really quite crazy. The average American gets about 16.2 grams per day, according to this study. Now, if you want to know how much fiber you should get in a day, this right here is a great place to start. If you are a male like myself between the ages of 19 and 50, I should be getting 38 grams of fiber per day. If you are a female between 19 and 50, you should be getting at least 25. Now, keep in mind, these are the bare minimums, but 95% of us are not getting the recommended daily intake of fiber. Now, I want to talk about this study, or this hospital right here, the Cleveland Clinic. If you went to Google and just asked Google, what is the top heart hospital in the United States? Google would tell you the Cleveland Clinic. The Cleveland Clinic is widely perceived to be the top heart hospital in the United States and one of the finest really in the world. It's an amazing place. This study right here, published in September of 2023 years ago, more than 23 years ago, they looked at fiber and multivitamin combination therapy. They wanted to know if fiber and a multivitamin together was beneficial influence on low density LDL cholesterol. Remember, we talked about cholesterol. How many of you are struggling or concerned with your cholesterol? If you click that little link right there, it will take you to the actual publication. Now, this is what they call a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized clinical trial. It was peer-reviewed, it was published, and you can see right here, it's been cited 18 times. It's pretty powerful. Now, unfortunately, you can only read the abstract right here. You can't read the entire article, but if you hit download full issue right here at the top, or if you go to unicityscience.org, you can pull up the entire study. And here is the study. This is fiber multivitamin combination therapy, a beneficial influence on low-density lipoprotein and homocysteine. You'll notice that it was done from the preventative cardiology section of the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio. And the fiber tested was something called BioSlife 2. Now, I want to just touch on that really quick. This is BioSlife 2. This is what they studied. It was from Rexall Pharmacy back in the day. You can see the little Rexall logo, BioSlife 2. Now, over the years, it changed slightly. BioSlife S. There was BioSlife Slim. By the way, these are different countries. This is in Australia. This is in, I believe this is Australia as well. This is in the Middle East, BioSlife. This is in South Korea, BioSlife. This is Australia again, BioSlife. But here in the United States, we call it Balance. So if you hear me talking about Balance or BioSlife, just know that they are interchangeable. They are one and the same. Now, this particular study that I'm talking about from the Cleveland Clinic, let me go back to that study. This study right here, the fiber tested was BioSlife 2. Now, if you are concerned about your LDL cholesterol, well, this study kind of addresses that. This line right here, by the end of the interim visit, by the time of the interim visit, which was 4 weeks after randomization, the treatment group demonstrated significantly lower LDL-C than the placebo group, and that trend continued through the next 4 weeks to the end of the blinded phase. Basically, the BioSlife 2 group, there was a significantly lower LDL-C, plant-based. And if you wanted to see the numbers there, you can actually scroll down just a little bit and you can see what they mean by significant. Significant. There's the actual numbers. In fact, if you keep scrolling to the bottom, the Cleveland Clinic, again, America's top heart hospital, talking a BioSlife, aka Balance, said such a product, if taken regularly, could reduce cardiovascular risk on a population basis and potentially decrease the need and or dose for lipid-lowering prescription drugs. Now, I still have quite a bit to go, but I'm actually going to start wrapping this up. Okay. Come back next week. I'm not quite done yet, so stick with me for just a moment. I'm going to talk about how to order these products and how to get started and how to use these products. But next week, I've got some more proof that I'll just kind of, I told you I didn't have a script really. I figured I'd just kind of make this up as I went. So I will end up providing more proof next week in place of some of the proof that I showed today. Anyway, let's talk about how we use these products. The tea. How many of you struggle with a low energy? Struggle with, you feel exhausted all the time. You're just tired. You're always exhausted. You need more energy. How many of you feel like that? You have brain fog, that sort of thing. Well, yerba mate is excellent for that. And when you take a really top quality Unimate, you're going to get the most amazing energy. In fact, I hear people call it whole house energy. The brain fog lifts, the appetite suppression goes, it gets rid of the food noise. So while you're fasting in the morning, you wake up and you drink your first Unimate. You can drink it hot, you can drink it cold. When you order, they're going to send you a nice little bottle like this, and it's got Unimate on the back of it. You just fill it up to there with cold water, add your packet, shake it up, and you want to sip on this. You don't want to chug it. You want to sip on it. Now, if you prefer hot Unimate, which is how I do it, I will put one packet in a 30 ounce, which is about 2 of these, of hot water. That's the way I drink it. Again, the goal is to sip it. You can drink it in as much or as little water as you want, hot or cold. It's entirely up to you. Now, when that one's gone, drink your second one. Pretty simple. You just move right into the next one. Now, before your heaviest meal of the day, what you're going to do is you're going to open your balance. Now, on the back of this same bottle, there's a little line that says balance. You're going to add the cold water up to there. You're going to add the balance, give it a quick little shake. Don't overshake it. It'll get really thick. And then this one you want to drink as fast as you possibly can, and then enjoy your meal. It is so simple. Now, the system costs $159. Plus then whatever your local tax is, $159, which breaks down to about $5.30 per day. In fact, if you just bought the Unimate, they would be $135, which is $2.25 per drink. I think that's a pretty reasonable price, $2.25. And then the balance would cost an additional $24 on that pricing. So $159 is pretty reasonable. Now, Unicity will give you a 90-day money-back guarantee. If you try their products and you are consistent with them for 90 consecutive days, they guarantee satisfaction. Basically, they guarantee you'll lower your blood pressure, you'll lower your glucose, your cholesterol. You'll just get healthier, and they're willing to show your blood numbers will improve. And if you're not satisfied, ask for a refund. They will give you all of your money back. Okay? Now, if you wanted to try the product, if you were sent to this live stream by somebody, all you have to do is get with that person. They have a referral code. That referral code guarantees you a lifetime discount to the company. Get with the person who sent you to me, and they will give you a referral code. You can order it and start your journey. And I want to touch on that briefly, referral code, okay? Unicity has an amazing referral program. They would rather have people actually using their products and talking about it and referring it out than having paid actors on television. So they do use a form of network marketing to market their products. And so what is network marketing? Network marketing is reaching out to the people that are closest to you and telling them about this product, referring this product to them. There's no pressure. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But if you like it, well, that's what network marketing is introducing it to the people that are around you. Now, if that network grows and grows and grows, everybody is happy. So they have an amazing referral program. And if anybody is interested in learning more about that referral program, there is a call tomorrow night. It's not live. It will be a Zoom call. Just get with the person who invited you to this live stream. Say, hey, I think I want to listen to that referral program, learn more about that. And hopefully we'll see you join the team. If you don't want to, let me just tell you, there's zero pressure. Okay, but we definitely need more help. If you're looking for a way to make an impact, a positive impact in your community, if you're looking for a way to help your family, your friends, that sort of thing get healthier, then we're looking for you. Everybody, thank you for joining me tonight. I know I was kind of shooting from the hip. I went a little bit long. I will try harder to stick to inside of an hour next week. I want to ask really quick, does anybody have any questions for me at all? And I also want to add to this that we are live across, 13 different platforms right now. We're live on my personal Facebook, The Healthy Pit Master. We're also live on Twitter, YouTube. If you have somebody who is interested in, or that you think that these products could benefit from, just send them this way next week. In addition to that, there are a number of doctors who are doing similar live streams. If you would like those doctors, get with the person who referred you to this live stream, and they can put you in front of a doctor who will tell you all about these products as well. Doesn't look like I have any questions. You guys are amazing. Let's get healthy together. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. We'll see you next Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern.